if you get kids to show up, like this is my core principle. To make progress, you have to do something for a long, long time, right?
Oh,
You have to, and you have to be
nice.
obsessed about it. And to do something for a long, long time, you have to like it. You can't fucking hate it. And so many coaches, they just have this massive survivorship bias of idiots like me. And I know this because I was this athlete. I was this athlete that coaches used all the time. They're like, see, if you just follow my program, you can be like Austin. And it was like, I was going to follow any fucking program because I was so addicted to the weight room and the progress and the gamification. And it was like one outlet in my life I felt like I had like total control over. If I just fucking eat a lot of food and lift weights, I'm going to make progress.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with like the individual program and the thing. And I was always used as that person. And I always felt, and I was the worst because I was like, yeah, I'm the fucking man. Like my coach likes me. And then we would go play on Saturday and I wouldn't fucking play because I was a terrible athlete, right? Like, and it was such a stupid argument that I couldn't get out of for the longest time. That's the biggest thing. You got to get kids to show up for a long period of time to make progress, to get them to show up for a long period of time. It can't suck. You can't. The whole grind, hard work mindset is such bullshit. The reason I lifted a lot was not because I was a fucking grinder. No matter how much I convinced myself as a grinder and a hard worker and all of these things, like those are principles, there's pieces there, but it was because I enjoyed it. Like I enjoyed the progress. I enjoyed whatever it is that I enjoyed, the winning, the progress, the numbers, whatever it was. I enjoyed it and it was very enjoyable for me. If I have something I don't enjoy, I'm the laziest fucking person in the world, right? Like I am so lazy, and that's every single person. And if you make weightlifting, if you make movement something that people don't enjoy, they're gonna be lazy. They're not gonna show up. And that's how you don't, that's the only way you don't get results is if they don't show up. If you get them to show up and you're not a total fucking moron, you're not having them balance on a Bosu ball for the entire fucking session, they're gonna get bigger, stronger, faster. And when we get to the absolute one percenters of the one percenters, and we've worked with a couple athletes, then we need to get maybe a little bit more specific, and we're doing some special things and we're getting into it. But again, that's just a knowledge piece. Take a lot of mushrooms and then go read some. Like, no, again, I think it's the same. That's how I was talking about the content. To get better at content, you have to do content. To be funnier, to be good at memes, you have to make jokes. You have to do memes, and you're gonna crash, and it's gonna be a failure. To be creative, you have to practice being creative, and that's like it's a active process of doing these things. And I'm a naturally creative person. Like I understand that I'm not very analytical in that setting. Like when I was like 6 years old, I was writing fantasy novels like a fucking nerd, like walking around. I like have a very visual brain. I can see a lot of things like in the brain. It's a weird ass brain. You don't want to be in there, but the creative process there, it's like setting up structures for coaches. Like a lot of my interns will come in and they're very, very analytical. And I love an analytical athlete because it gives me a balance of like learning from them and getting that analytical intern, learning from their analytical side, but also bringing them into the creative side. And I've seen that it's totally doable to be able to do this. And so some of the things I'll do, I will give them like 3 pieces of equipment. I'll do this on spot, give them 3 pieces of equipment, the interns. I'm like, you have to warm them up with these 3 pieces of equipment, right? So that's just a practice, just a rep of how the fuck do I come up with this? How do I come up with this solution right now on the spot? Getting that brain working. Another thing that I do is like once a week, the warm-up game has to be creative. Like I have to come up with a new warm-up game that week. So every Wednesday, the first thing we do is a new warm-up game. And the reason I do that is because once I found my warm-up games, I found that I was like pretty stale in what I was doing and I wasn't working my own creative muscle. And we all fall into our own like programming traps. And I realized like if I don't safeguard that programming trap for myself, I kind of just coast. And then like we all kind of coast. So the way to work that creative muscle for myself, I will like make myself come up with a new warm-up that day. So that's another way to do it. Another great thing, and I talked about this on one of the YouTube videos, is when like a good writer and a good musician is coming up with a song, and they always talk about like sitting in a room with a bunch of their mates and they like go through the creative writing process where they're riffing with each other, they're coming up with ideas. And like you have 30 athletes to do that with like every single day. Like use that creative process, use that. They think there's so many athletes that see things probably better athletically than you do as a strength coach. They're a better athlete than you. They see the thing that you want to see much better and much deeper than you. Use that resource, riff with them, allow them to come up with some of the warm-ups. A lot of times we'll like put for like accessories, it'll be like a hinge variation, and I'll say it like has to be spicy, and that just means like every rep has to be different or every set has to be different. And there's a lot of trash that comes out of that, but some of the pieces that the athletes come up with are really, really nice. But it also keeps it makes it like this session very organic and alive for that athlete, in the same way like music is when you're in a room with just a bunch of very creative people and you're riffing and coming up with ideas off of each other. But I think the athlete side of things is also very underutilized for especially a bunch of analytical like meathead coaches that could do a lot with just talking to an elite level athlete. And I think a lot of strength coaches, I think this is like one of the biggest sins of a strength coach is you don't talk to elite level athletes, or you don't work with elite level athletes enough. Because when you talk to them, the way they see and feel movement is so different than a typical, like a mediocre level athlete. And just having those conversations, you pick up on so much. You're like, oh, this is what's actually happening here, or this is what you're actually seeing. And you can learn so much, almost so much more from that than I did in like my 4 years of college, learning exercise science and the book stuff. And I'm not saying the foundations are wrong, because you do have to have so many data points. Like the other piece of the creative thing is like you have to have something that centers you and a ton of data points that come in. And Range talks about this, where it's like you have 7 different data points here, and the way to be creative is to connect those creative like
You
data
can't
points.
play jazz if you don't know a bit of the fundamental music rules, because then you don't know. You're not being deliberate in the way that you break them. You're just always
100%.
Yeah.
And there's too much chaos. It's too much. Like, it's too much out there. It's just nonsense. So it's like you have to have some sort of structure, something that you can draw upon, the notes that you can draw upon, and then connect those notes. And that's your symphony. That's your harmony in your program. And I think coaches, because this is what I've realized too. It's like, and this is partially my fault, I think, in like my programming. It's like now you have young strength coaches that know not, like they don't have enough data points, and they just like they're all over the place with it. And I fall into that trap too, but I'm like, fuck, like I kind of set you up in a wrong track there, because I talk about being creative all the time.
If you like our content about training, then you'll love our programming too. Head to the notes below to grab a free week of general physical preparation. You get unlimited access to me and fresh programming every single week for less than $1 a